Welcome back to Living with This Monster with your host Lemon Scented. It's a beautiful Monday, and let's get into it. So today we're talking about um, people that have depression are just lazy. This kind of mentality can be super destructive to people that are struggling to stand up. It knocks them down, and I've been dealing with this for 20 plus odd years, probably since I was like 12 years old. And um, throughout that time, it didn't start off with me being lazy. In fact, for a large kid, I was running around with all the other kids, playing football, skateboarding, biking, hiking with my friends, all that kind of fun stuff. But when I got home, I was just pooped. And that's because I was wearing a mask the entire time. And I was struggling to just get that persona out there. And, so over the years, 12 years old, I'm in junior high. I remember junior high was a very stressful time for me, and struggled a lot. And there was probably only like one, it was a guidance counselor that she really kind of understood, at least that I was struggling. She didn't really understand how to deal with it, but she understood that I was struggling. So she kind of made a safe space, and that got me through. But again, I was a very active kid. I went out all the time. I was with my friends constantly. Through high school, same way. I was always active, always, But at that time, you got to figure probably about 20 years ago, what mental health. Think of how much struggle there is with mental health currently right now, and then take that 20 years back, and it's almost non-existent, especially within children and teenagers and young adults. And so, if you were a woman, you might be able to get some help. Other than that, if you were a guy, people really didn't know how to deal with it. And so, I just kind of soldiered through. At the time, I didn't even think there was anything wrong. I just thought my brain kind of thought weird, and I was a weird guy. And then in my 20s, I started to retract. And by retract, I mean, like, at first it was just, oh, I don't want to go out, tonight with friends, or I don't want to go hang out with friends, or I don't want to go to the movies. I don't want to go do this. I don't want to go do that. And then it was, I don't want to leave the house. And, it starts to get to a point where the world is terrifying. Going out is terrifying. Having to put that mask on is the worst thing and the scariest thing you can go through. And so you kind of start to get this agoraphobia, this fear of the outside. You don't want to go outside. And at the time, the only answer for me was to stuff my face. And so, I remember thinking, I should just eat myself to death. And I tried. Unfortunately, sometimes it doesn't work, and things have started hurting and breaking. So it went from this sheer terror of being outside or doing anything and everything that was stopping me from moving. The anxiety was making me sick. The anxiety was making me quit jobs. The depression was making me not care about the fact that I was quitting these jobs, not care about what was happening to me. And so you get this like spiral. And so deep down that you should be going and doing things and making your life, having friends, making memories. But your brain doesn't let you do that. It lets you fester on the one problem you have. It lets you fester on maybe a missed, opportunity that you had, or maybe it was a conversation you had with somebody that went south, and you just dwell on that, and that makes you not want to leave. And so most people, everybody has those days where they're like, I don't want to go to work. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. But you don't have your brain telling you, then don't. Don't do it. You'll feel better if you don't. Just go back to bed. And then eventually bed becomes your safe space. Sleep and that non-existence becomes your safe space. And so you just want to live there because it's safer and you can't function outside in the world anymore. In my case, I was kind of forced to go out and do things. I kept a job. I've never lost a job that I didn't quit purposely, if that makes sense. Like, I always made the choice. So I never lost a job because of my depression. But I remember I had this one job that was highly stressful, and it was a retail job. And I I was constantly anxious for whatever reason, whether it be, if I screwed up the till and I was a key holder, so like closing, like I would check the gate 6 or 7 times, knowing damn well it's locked, knowing I've done everything I'm supposed to, but because my brain wouldn't let it go that gate was open and it was going to get robbed, even though that was not the case, even though it's in the mall. It became just a regular thing for me to check everything 4 times. And it would take me 20 extra minutes than everybody else to get out at the end of the day. Then I started realizing that I was clenching my jaw a lot. And, to the point of where I'd finish an 8, 9, 10-hour shift, and my jaw would just be in excruciating pain. Then my teeth started to fall out. And I didn't know why. I was like, oh man, like I remember I had in the back, I forgot what they're called, like near your wisdom teeth. I remember I had one of those just shatter. It just came out in pieces. And I go, well, that's not good. And I ended up going to the doctor, and the doctor goes, do you grind your teeth at night? And I go, not that I know of. And he goes, are you clenching your jaw a lot? And I go, yeah. And he goes, because these teeth aren't broken because of rot. They're broken because you shattered them. And then I realized I was having panic attacks constantly, but because I couldn't let that be known in the middle of a workday, I was going in the back, sitting down, and just hyperventilating for 10 minutes, clenching my jaw, trying to get a hold of myself, panicked. And then I'd come back out, and the face, you would never tell. No one told. No one knew. No one could see that. And so I did that for years. And eventually that was too much. Eventually I couldn't even cause damage to myself enough to keep myself under control. And so when you get to that point, or you get to the point where you're just so distraught, you can't move. It freezes you. And to anybody who hasn't experienced it, it's really hard to understand what that means, because they haven't experienced what it's like to be stuck in your own head, and that means being stuck in your own body. That means being unable to move, unable to do anything. It's the reason why you see all these depression, houses and stuff like that, and they're all full with junk and stuff like that. It maybe started off as a small pile, but because the depression said, do it later, you start to you start to push things off, and you just start to become this shell of a person. And then you look back, and the bowl that you didn't clean, or the bowls, or the cups, or whatever the case may be, once you realize the mess you've made, it's way bigger, and it's all over the place, and you realize all the stuff, and then that creates a shame monster that kind of comes into you, that how could you live in this filth? And then the depression goes, keep living in it. If you just ignore it, if you just fight it. So it's a big circle. And I think that's what a lot of people miss when they say that people with depression are just lazy. And it's unfortunate, because as somebody with depression and seeing other people with depression, hearing that and not knowing that, it's coming from a place of people that don't know, I would be destroyed. And I would be so upset. And I would be, maybe they're right. And so then you just start going down that road, and that road then takes you on another road. And then all of a sudden you've got all these problems that are built up in your head that don't actually exist. But because of the way your brain works, and because of whether it be misfirings, or because you had a depression from a previous issue or anything like that, you just start to build and build and build and build until it's a mountain of shit. And you don't know how to deal with it. So then that starts giving you anxiety. I mention those two a lot because it seems to be like if you've got depression, you've got anxiety as well. They seem to run hand in hand. And then suicidal ideation down the road as well. Especially for men because they just sit on it and they don't have anybody to talk to and things like that. And again, I've said this before. I said this last thing, so I won't go into it. But, these things compound. And when they compound, they become much worse problems for you and much worse problems to deal. 20 years, 25 years, 20 something years. I've dealt with it alone by myself, forcing myself through. Any counselor that I saw was doing it for other people. Anybody that's seeking help, I told them I was fine. I was just going through a rough patch. And then I attempted because I didn't know how to deal with it. And that's when it finally broke that there was something wrong. And, my mom at the time, she really tried to help. And I still remember the phone call to her. This is what breaking sounds like, right? And like I said the last thing, conversation's awkward and it's often sad. But for me, I feel like there's a positive point to the end of this. But I remember calling her. I was staying at a buddy's house. I was living at a buddy's house. And I remember calling her and I said, Mom, I love you. I'm sorry for being such a shit person. I'm sorry for being so in my own shit and so angry and so just frustrated. And that I hope that she's okay. And then I hung up the phone. Don't know how she found me. She didn't know where my buddy lived. Don't know how she got there in time. I don't know how any of that played out. I just remember her opening the door and I was pressed up against the wall in the closet. And I was just broken. And then she comes to find out that I'd basically wasted all my money. I had become so stuck in my own mind that I wasn't leaving the house. I wasn't leaving my room. I wasn't taking showers. Like, that's what I mean. All of this just compounds. And to someone outside looking in that hasn't experienced it or doesn't know that feeling, it very much seems like you're just being lazy or you're playing this out to not do something. But the reality of it is you're terrified. You are terrified of what's happening to you. And it freezes you in place. It sucks. I wish this on no man, but I do want to address that particular statement because I'm seeing it come up a little bit more now. And it's a statement that's just factually inaccurate for a majority. I mean, there's people that are definitely going to abuse the words, you know what I mean? They're going to abuse that thought process and be like, oh, well, I'm depressed, and they actually are lazy, and, things like that. But people will abuse anything. They will abuse every statement in the world because they're trying to get what they want. That doesn't mean that the majority of people that are suffering from depression, anxiety, and so on and so forth are going to be just lazy people that don't want to get help, don't want to move forward, don't want to do anything with their life. They're people that got stuck. Like, mental illness is such an unknown thing on why it happens and things like that. We're just now starting to get the grasp of what things like PTSD does, what trauma is, what causes these things, how mental illness is different between, if you've got a chemical imbalance versus if you've got trauma. There's two different pathways. And it's such a foreign thing to so many people that have never experienced it that, like, it seems like such a cop-out for them. And I don't blame them so much because I used to be the same way. I used to be in that mindset of oh, well, they're just lazy. You know what I mean? And at the time, I was suffering from depression. So I was like, they're just lazy. Look at me. Of course, everybody that I've talked to that has depression that's been in my life, 9 times out of 10, they work their asses off. But behind the scenes, and that's the other thing too, is because this takes so long to fix. in a lot of ways, because it takes so long to understand why you're broken, whether it's chemical or if there's trauma or if there's things that happen to you in your head that just you blacked out and you don't remember, but it's causing you strife because your brain remembers, you just don't. And there's so many different avenues on this thing, on what we call mental illness and just mental health in general, that it's very hard for somebody to wrap their brain around. It's like, I use this because this weirded me out, but there's a certain percentage of people that don't have a narration in their head, right? Which is usually your voice telling you to do things, or you narrate things in your head and stuff like that. And I've had a narrator in my head since I was little, and it baffles me that people just walk around without that going on in their head, because it's going on in my head constantly. It's a common thing. But just that people don't, same way with mental health. If you've never experienced it, you've never seen what it can do and the damage it can cause, the easiest statements seem to be the most true for you, even though you don't know what's going on. And it's an invisible illness. My arm's not fallen off. I don't have, pock marks from rot. I don't have any noticeable symptoms until it's too late, and then it's a whole world of issues. You know what I mean? There's so many issues that go into mental illness and the ways to get away from it that are so unhealthy. Like, you don't ever notice. Drinking is a huge one, and that's what I did in my early 20s. That was 100% the case. I just drank away. When I was drunk, I was a happy camper. When I was drunk, I was the life of the party. Till I wasn't. It's just, I'm reaching out about these things because I want to inform the uninformed. And I want to let the people that are suffering, that do understand what I'm talking about, that know exactly the position that I am in, I want them to know that there's somebody out there that's speaking out on their behalf that can, and talk about the things that are fucked up in their life. Because, I think to get the point across, it's like, here's what happened to me, and this is why everything's going to shit. Look at how many famous people no one knew had mental illness till it was too late. Just this year alone, we've lost so many that were suffering, and they were suffering for years and years and years, and no one ever knew. And I think there's a statement by Robin Williams. Rest in peace. And he said something along the lines of I want to make people laugh because I don't want them to feel what I've been feeling inside my entire life. And, a lot of depressed people and a lot of people with those issues, it's exactly what they did. That's what I did. I wanted to be the life of the party, to show people that they didn't have to be sad. Even though inside I was like, I could jump off this fucking building right now. And, so know that, and know that that's a thing, that I get that you think it's laziness, because it can appear like that. Absolutely can appear like that. But a lot of time it's not. A lot of time people are putting forth their maximum effort to do the absolute minimum because that's all they can do. People are putting forward their absolute most energy to just function in some barely recognizable way. And that doesn't include doing the standard things that everybody else takes for granted. Work is hard enough. Some people with depression are suffering so bad that the only thing they can focus on is work. Right? So they do their 8-hour shift, and they go home, and the only thing that they can think of to do is to lay down and go to sleep, because that erases everything. For 8 hours a day, I don't have to think. For 8 hours of the day, for 12 hours of the day, depending on how much you sleep, I don't have to think about this. I don't have to do anything that I don't want to do. And no one can bother me. I'm in my own space. And that is the circle that a lot of people live in. And I wouldn't call that lazy. I would call that suffering. Not fun. It's embarrassing. I was embarrassed when people came over and saw my room because it smelled like a foot. It smelled like crap. I had dirty clothes everywhere. I had, oh God, cans everywhere. I had trash everywhere. Old trash. You know what I mean? It was old. I hadn't done anything with it. And, I was just living to try to make it to another day. And, like I said, I'm a big dude. I was, when I started getting into the mindset of like, I didn't want to die with people knowing that I was attempting to die. I decided that I was going to eat myself to death. And then people would be like, well, he's always been a heavy dude. And then he just lost control. And then, it took him. And it didn't take me. What it did was make my knees weak. And so when I'd swing out of bed in the morning, if I was to swing my legs out and immediately get up, the motion, the rotation on my knee and the weight that I was at, because I was about 600 pounds at the time, the weight on my knee would pop my knee out of place. I immediately fall to the ground. It happened, God, 1 week it happened, I think, every day. Every time I got out of bed, I had to slow myself down in order to do it. And I had moments where I was just walking and it did it. Ankles give way, ankles start. So that's, once the medical issues start, makes it even easier to be like, I'm just not going to go outside. I was sleeping infrequently. I remember I was waking up and I would get out of bed in the morning and my brain would hurt so bad it felt like somebody was removing my eyes with hot pokers. And I would fall to my knees and just start crying. The pain was so bad. Then he found out that I had sleep apnea because of my weight, because of pushing on my chest. And my oxygen was getting extremely low. And I forgot what the doctor said, but the doctors were like, you were probably a month or two before you probably would have died in your sleep. Just purely from asphyxiation alone. And, it was already out of control. I was embarrassed because I was so heavy. I was embarrassed because it hadn't worked. I was embarrassed because I was depressed. I was embarrassed because I was depressed and I didn't know why. Why am I so sad? Why am I crying at a Scooby-Doo commercial? Why am I say that as a joke, but it's true. It's true. I mean, the stupidest things would come on TV and just make me cry. So if you're suffering from depression, I know that you're not lazy. I know that it's a struggle, and I know you're pushing forward and putting through as much energy as you can to get forward. And you just need to keep pushing forward. You just need to keep your head up. And if you have extra energy, because every once in a while you'll have that little bit of break where it's like, I actually feel okay today. And if you're in that mode and you're in that particular position, try to clean up one thing, take a shower, take a cold shower if you need to. Do something, to kind of help. And it's this one thing. There's this, I don't even remember what it was, and my brain is so kind of crazy now because of all the stuff that I misremember a lot of things. But one of the things was this, I think it was an army sergeant that said, if you just do one thing that's either cleaning, whatever, do one thing that you need to do or that's imperative to you. Just do that one thing. And if that's all that you can muster, that's all you can muster for the day. And then do it again. And then do it again. And do it again. It's all baby steps. That's why I say this thing takes forever. It's because it's all baby steps. You do big leaps. Some people can make that jump. I tried to do big leaps multiple times and couldn't. and I have to do baby steps. It's the only way I can do it. Because if I try to do the big leaps and I miss, it completely reverses everything I've done so far. So I would suggest doing it as slow as you possibly can, as well, not as possibly as you can, but as slow enough that you can kind of catch yourself if you start to fall. You know, with big leaps, sometimes you don't get that chance, and when the fall happens, it just pushes you lower, and you just kind of circle and circle and circle. So, please do not think that you are lazy and that's the reason you're feeling this way. That you are worthless because you're feeling this way, because you're acting this way. Don't ever let anybody tell you those things, because those people don't understand, and I take pity on them, because they're some of the nicest people and some of the best people I've met have been people that are severely mentally ill with depression, anxiety. Sometimes they're schizophrenics. They're completely normal until they have a schizo episode. Doesn't make them bad people. It just makes them, they're unhealthy. They've got an illness. Just like catching a cold, just like catching whatever. It's a mental illness, but it's an illness all the same. And I hope that people hear this, and I hope people get a little softer on the people that are around them that are suffering from mental illness, because it is extremely hard. Anyways, I also have, to kind of round this out, I also have some great statistics I pulled from ADAA.org, a couple infographics, and I forgot what the other website is, but I will transfer to that now. And so the first one I have is the statistics for men's mental health. This big push is because it's Men's Mental Health Month. They're less likely. So if men account for about 10% of the patients with bulimia and anorexia, and it goes super unreported because men don't talk about it. 6 million men suffer worldwide from depression every year. Again, male depression goes undiagnosed. 3 million men in the U.S. have panic disorder, agoraphobia, or any other phobia. 2.3 million Americans are affected by bipolar disorder, and are equal amount of men and women develop the illness. This is the crazy one for schizophrenia, at least. One of the leading causes of disability in America is schizophrenia. Approximately 3.5 million people in the United States have been diagnosed with it, and 90% of those who are diagnosed by age 30 are men that suffer from schizophrenia, which is a whole new monster. That one I don't have much of, other than friends and things like that. I don't have much of a viewpoint on it because I really haven't experienced it. So what are the symptoms? You've got physical symptoms, headaches, digestive problems, and pain. Absolutely. My body hurts. And my head is constantly killing me, and digestive problems, my stomach goes blah, 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 a lot. And I hope you understand what that means. You do a lot of escapist behavior, misuse of alcohol and drugs, of course, controlling, violent, or abusive behavior. Anger is a huge one. Anger is something that had taken over me. I went from being extremely sad and extremely emotional to violently angry and constantly pissed for years of my life. I'm sure I knocked off a good 20 years just from that alone. So, anger, irritability, and aggressiveness, absolutely. Absolutely. I was ready to fight at a drop of a hat. I was angry at the world. I could rant about anything. My friends found it funny. They thought it was just who I am. And I wasn't. I was sick. I was angry at myself mostly. Your risky behavior changes mood, concentration, blah, 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 goes in through, more stuff like that. Men use methods in suicide that are more likely to cause death, may act more on the suicidal thoughts, and they show fewer warning signs. And so that's from the ADA.org, which I've found to be pretty trustworthy in my own research. But as always, do your own research. Please do your own research. 6 million men suffer from depression every year. This is another one from Mental Health America, and this is a short little infographic, which you can find on there. I just looked up all these under mental illness statistics. And so male depression often goes undiagnosed. Approximately 19.1 million Americans, adults ages 18 to 54, have an anxiety disorder. Let's see. There was one in here about suicide that was crazy. And there it is. More than 4 times as many men and women die from suicide in the United States in 2010. A total of 38,364 Americans died by suicide, and over 3/4, 79% of these suicides were men. Male suicides have been on the rise since 2007, since 2000. Suicide is the 7th leading cause of death among males, accounting for 2.2 of all male deaths in 2011. These are obviously a little dated, but a lot of it is you've got alcohol dependency, 1 in 5. Gay and bisexual men tend to a lot of higher rates of substance abuse and whatnot. Military vets. I mean, for fuck's sake, if you can't get any feeling and any want to help somebody with mental illness for whatever reason, but you support the vets, you're obviously doing it backwards. Vets go through so much mental shit. It's ridiculous, and we don't do enough. Twice the rate of alcohol and drug use. Famous athletes, if you really want to, Larry Sanders, Terry Bradshaw, Kenyon Dooling, Jim Pearsall, and Earl Campbell all had moments where there breakdowns, bipolar disorders, all these things. These are famous people. These achieved so much in their life, and they were ripping themselves apart while doing it. BPD is a big one. BPD kills. Seeking treatment. Men are less likely than women to seek help for substance abuse and stressful life due to social norms, downplaying systems, and reluctance to talk. And I do have another one that's over here that this one doesn't talk about it, but I read that it's like 40% just think they can get over it, and I would say probably 10% of those 40% may actually be able to get over it. The rest, man, you're just causing undue stress, undue anger, and probably more issues later on down the road just because of what you're doing, pushing it down. 60% of men will experience a traumatic event in their lives compared to 50% of women, so a little 10% higher. In the United States, white males account for 70% of deaths by suicide in 2019. 70% of the deaths by suicide were done by men in 2019. Tell me we don't have a fucking problem. Only about 36% of males with a mental illness in the U.S. actually receive treatment. 70% of those die annually. 70% of those who die by suicide annually worldwide are men. Why the fuck is this not a bigger issue? Why is it 1 month and it's a day and that's it? That's all we got? This is a problem. This is a problem, and will get bigger and bigger and bigger. It is. It's been spiking. Suicide is the second leading cause of death in the USA for those 12 to 24 years old. With LGBTQ plus people being twice as likely to attempt suicide than their heterosexual peers, which that goes along with society norms and things like that could be causing those. Well, let's see what else we got. Depression. Nearly 1 in 10 men experience anxiety and depression on a daily basis, but less than half of those men will ever seek treatment. I didn't seek treatment for 20 fucking years. I just saw treatment 5 years ago. 20 years of this. Some men have been doing it for 40 plus and not doing it well. Substance use, that all goes up. I'm familiar with drugs, and I'm familiar with drinking. And a lot of that was to escape. So that tracks. Anger issues the same way. You get so pent up and so frustrated that it just comes out in anger, and the anxiety kind of unleashes this like fight or flight mode in you, and sometimes you just fight is the only one you got. And so absolutely, about 2% of the men in the United States are diagnosed with general anxiety disorder, and roughly 20% of men will experience an anxiety disorder in their lifetime. Trauma and PTSD, 60% of men will experience a traumatic event in their lives. Bipolar disorder, eating disorder, specific concerns for Black and BIPOC men. Addressing the stigma of mental health for men. This is a great little article right here from choosingtherapy.com. If you want to go check them out and just take a look at it, it really covers a lot of things. The stigma is a big one. People just don't. The real mental health stigma comes from expectations. Yeah, I agree. I want to go in and I don't want to talk about my problems. I want them to be fixed. I'm doing enough as it is to say that I have problems, that there should be something out there to fix. Unfortunately, a lot of people that are experiencing this, they're going through it for the first time, and they don't understand that when there is mental health help out there, there's therapy, there's all kinds of stuff. What they don't understand is that it's still an emerging thing, and it's not something that we can just give you a pill and send you on your way. Especially if you've got chemical imbalance, right? And so it's like, it's nothing exactly that's happened in your life, but you've got a chemical imbalance in your brain. It might take, and they do have tests now that can narrow it down, but they might take, 4 or 5 different tries, and those all, come with the buildup, which is, take it over, a month or 2 months or 3 months. And then if that doesn't work, then you have to build down, because if you stop it immediately, it can cause all kinds of problems and even death in some cases. So, yeah. So the stigma between, I don't want people to know I have mental illness, and then also, I want it to be done immediately. And so that's like, both of those things end up being terrible for you when it comes to actually getting help, because you just quit so fast. Coping strategies that can help with men's mental health. Relaxation techniques, absolutely. If you guys aren't taking time for yourself, if you're not taking time to just relax and have your time, not with anybody else, not with loved ones, friends, family, but just relaxation for yourself, you're doing yourself a disservice, especially if you're suffering from depression, anxiety, and all these things. Relaxation and self-care are huge. And it doesn't have to be anything special. It doesn't have to be, mantras and things like that. Just standard self-care would go a huge way to help a lot. And supporting self-care. It's always, men need to do this, men need to do that, men need to do that. And then I'm going to go have a spa day. Okay. Well, Men also need a spa day. Men also need days to relax and breathe. And I'm not placing the blame on anybody, by the way. I don't want anybody to listen to this and think that. I'm just saying that that's the expectation from society, is that, men just keep going until they're dead or old and can't, function anymore. So, get active, definitely outdoors. I've heard many people talk about that camping and being outdoors is a huge thing for them. There's a huge, release of stress when going camping and things like that. I'm a city boy. It doesn't work for me, but I can understand the feeling. So yeah, getting active, doing exercises, doing that things. Alcohol is a big one. If you drink and you have mental illness, it's not helping you. Ever. It's not helping you. As someone who drank, you know what it turned me into? Pretty hardcore alcoholic for a while. And that's just what happens. You drink, and the first time you get drunk, you might not be as heavy drinker. And the next time you get drunk, you get a little more, and then you're doing that for a couple years, and then all of a sudden you're closing down the bar, and you're still searching for more alcohol a day when closing time comes, because you're not drunk enough to cover the feelings. And even then, being drunk can sometimes do reverse and completely let you explode all over the place, and you just lose your mind. So don't do that. Alcohol's bad. This one, I can understand why they say it. I don't necessarily agree, because it's really hard to create social connections when you're having these issues, because I guess just maybe me, because I'm very upfront about my mental issues. And so I'm very much, my last job that I had, one of the guys that I work with, he was about my age. And I remember like the first or second time I talked to him, I was like, so I'm fucked up. And he goes, what do you mean? And I was like, oh, I've got, PTSD, anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation, all these things. And he looks at me, he goes, hold on. He goes, I'm going to go on break. Come with me. I go, okay. And so I went with him on break outside, and he goes, dude, I have the same issue. And it was like his face lit up, because he had somebody to just talk about these problems with. And, I was taken aback from it, because I was like, well, I need to be honest about this now, because I might have control over it now, but I might break down later, and it'll cause all kinds of problems. And so, still a good friend of mine. We really bonded from that. But it was it's a really hard thing to be social and then not be social, because you're like, I don't want to do anything. I don't want to go out. I don't want to be friends. And, everybody else is doing stuff. I don't want to go out in public. I don't want to do anything with anybody. So that one I agree with. Try to get out with your friends and stuff like that, and really force yourself to go out. But at the same time, I completely understand why that's extremely difficult and not exactly the easiest one to follow. But like I said, you can check out all of this on Choosing Therapy. There's more details and stuff like that. There's also ways to get help. There's all kinds of stuff that talks about, here's the whole list right here. Mental health support group app called Circles. Nowadays with the digital sorry, I tipped over my drink. Nowadays with the internet, now you don't have to go talk to anybody face to face. You can go see a counselor completely online. You can go do these things completely online. If that's your stop, fine. Excuse me, tired. If that's your problem and you don't want to go see people, or you don't want to be seen in public with it, by all means, find an app that doesn't. It looks like this one right here is an app. Like I said, I will forever push. Go find help. I'm not a doctor. I'm just some dude that's broken, that understands the walk, that understands how you kind of have to have your feet to the fire in order to make the run. However, I do have a particular position and a particular viewpoint that I think is rare within people with mental illness. And that is the acceptance that I can talk about the problems that are wrong with me and kind of explain that to people that may or may not get that actual idea. So yeah, if you're struggling, there is a ton of stuff on this on choosingtherapy.com that could be a lot of help. It's got relationship stuff. It's got psychiatry, drinking moderation, mental health sports groups, mental health newsletter, all that kind of stuff. Or, if you're fine with going and seeing a doctor, talk to your doctor, let's go. Take the yellow books, or in this case, take your phone, type in therapy, therapist, whatever, and look up your local therapist and find one, call them up and be like, hey, are you open? Are you taking any people? Like I said, this is going to take you probably multiple times. Not everybody gets lucky the first go. And finding the right person is definitely a big part of the whole issue. Is that most people will go, the guy they go see, they don't like, and then that kind of breeds this whole mentality of like, well, I saw somebody and they sucked, so everybody sucks, and I can't get help. You just got to run the gauntlet, unfortunately. And as somebody who's gone through 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different counselors and therapists, it took a long time to find somebody. But finding somebody allowed me to be able to do what I'm doing right now. And that is the breakthrough that I think a lot of guys need to find that they're not finding right now, that makes them kind of fall apart and hide inside and push everything down. Is that like I took a step outside of my comfort zone and I tried to find somebody. When I talked to that somebody, we didn't click, or we didn't agree, or whatever the case may be, and that was it. I figured, okay, I gave it a shot. I'm never going to do this again. I'm never going to talk about it ever again. I'm going to stuff it down, and hopefully it doesn't bite me in the ass. It always does. So yes, please, by all means, go get help. Go get help. I would say that if you had seen me 2 years ago, 3 years ago, you would see a man that is on his deathbed. Sunken in eyes. I couldn't look you in the face. Quiet. When I was talking, I was angry. Violently angry. Frustrated with the world. Frustrated with everything. Frustrated with my own hobbies, with my own life. Get it. I get it. And then you step out and maybe the circles you're in don't understand. Maybe the people around you don't understand, and you step out and you just get railroaded. Immediately right out the gate. Or called a pussy. Or quit being a wuss. You don't have that. You're just being lazy. Shall I go on with the terrible shit? Those people either don't have your best interest in mind, or those people don't understand what the fuck they're talking about. And unfortunately, a lot of people from the older generations, and like I said, 20 years ago, this didn't exist. So it existed. It just didn't exist as openly as it is now. But you take generations, 1 or 2 generations behind us, and they didn't have any of that. So how could they know? Because they were told the same thing. Stuff it down. Stuff it down, man. Ignore it. It'll all work out. Forget about it. Just forget about it. Stay chill. And we wonder why they're now all having issues. You know what I mean? Like, we're wondering why now everything is just rising up between the ages of 12 and the ages of 84. Men and women, I mean, it's going up across the board, so I ain't going to exclude women on this one, but men have been seeing an increase in both mental illnesses and in suicide rates. because they were being told from another generation that didn't deal with their problems. I know plenty of people that their grandfather, how their grandfather dealt with any kind of issue? They drank it to death. And then whenever it was brought up, they would freak out. Don't be that person. You're going to have to deal with it. You're going to have to deal with any of the problems you're going through, unfortunately, and they're scary. And you can take them one step at a time. But dealing with it is always going to be better than stuffing it inside and drowning in a bottle, drowning in a pill, drowning in a fucking joint, whatever the case may be. And don't get me wrong, I've done these all to circumvent those feelings. So I understand, I get it. It ended up not working for me. Eventually it stops. And then you got another problem on your hand. If you're using pills or hell, even alcohol, I mean, it could ruin your life in so many different ways. And then you got unresolved mental illness, and you got other problems now, which causes kind of this net you can't get out of. So I get it, but if you're struggling with that, I would seriously seek help, because it can only get worse. Yeah. This is a hard one. This is a hard one because you won't get away from it. This won't stop. People will say the damnedest things. None of this will stop for you. But I think understanding that the people that have mental illness know that you're not lazy. And I think that anybody that has mental illness that is hearing these things and feels lazy might just need a re-upper on the fact that people that have mental illness, sometimes the bare minimum is all they can do, and that's okay. It is, as my little sign right there says, it's okay to not be okay. It really is. It's not some taboo thing that people should look at like that. They should look at it as they should look at it like any other disease. You don't look at things like cancer or AIDS or these heavy hitting diseases, and you don't go, you're just faking it. You can beat it. Don't worry about it. Why are we doing that with mental illness? Why? There's no reason for it. There's just no reason for it. Who knows? I don't know. This is just one man's opinion, but I just see what's coming around the corner, and it's not good. And it's not good for anybody. So, just like always with every other podcast that I've done so far, if you don't struggle from mental illness and you are listening to this podcast, I hope that it's been insightful for you. And I hope that it can help if you come across somebody who is, or you yourself end up falling prey to it. Falling prey? I don't know if that's the correct word, but falling into mental illness. And know that I'm here. I'm going to continue these podcasts. And, for now, I'm trying to answer every comment I can. So, tell me what you want me to talk about. You want me to talk about a certain part of mental illness and what my feelings are on it? By all means. I got stories for days. If you are experiencing mental illness right now and you are fighting to stay afloat and you are fighting every day to just be okay, keep going. I am rooting for you, just like I am rooting for myself to get out of this. And in a weird way, Not so much a personal way, but in a weird way. We are in this together. And together we can make it back out. Keep fighting. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of how far you've gotten so far. However little you think it is, it's better than you were the day before. And I'm proud of you for that. I'm proud of you for pushing forward. So this week, I just think that I think we should all focus on being nicer to each other. Understanding that people are going through some shit you may not see. And I think we should do good things for each other. Anything you can think of. If you need to, I don't know, someone's short money in the line at a grocery store, or, take back some lady's cart like I said last week, or just do good things for people. Maybe we can share the love. I know that sounds hippie, but, if you can't do that, or you're just too, you're just too depressed to really go out and do things, or go out and be nice to people, then I want you to be nice to yourself. I want you to self-care. I want you to tell yourself positive things. I want you to find the best things about you and hold them close to your heart. And keep doing that. Keep reaffirming yourself. Keep taking self-care days. Keep doing what you need to do to make sure you're okay. And again, we will get out of this hole together. So for that is this week's podcast. I know I put out one 2 days ago, but that's because my schedule's all messed up. So there will be every Monday. I might add another one if this starts to pick up some traction. And yeah, I care for you all, and I hope that this reaches enough people that we can actually do some change and do some positive stuff in the world. So I hope you have a good week. I hope you have a good day. I love you all. Proud of you all. And I'll catch you next Monday.